kind of like a Black Mirror episode slash, Outer Limits. Hello everyone and welcome to Book Invasion. My name is Scott. Today we're going to be talking about 3 Days in April by Edward Ashton. This was Edward Ashton's first novel, published in 2015, and what a novel it is. There's a lot of buzzwords that could describe this novel, such as cyberpunk, speculative, sci-fi, a little bit of dystopian, a little bit of a techno thriller, things like that, but it's a book that, especially for a debut, it really pushes the box as far as what it is and how it's described. It's very jam-packed, full of different elements and different pieces that kind of make this novel really interesting and really an engaging first debut. So let me read you a bit of the synopsis so you can get a good idea of what's going on. Anders Jensen is having a bad month. His roommate is a data thief, his girlfriend picks fights in bars, and his best friend is a cyborg and a lousy tipper. When everything is spiraling out of control, though, maybe those are exactly the kind of friends you need. In a world divided between the genetically engineered elite and the unmodified masses, Anders is an anomaly. Engineered, but still broke and living next to a crack house. All he wants is to land a tenure-track faculty position and maybe meet someone who's not technically a criminal. But when a nightmare plague rips through Hagerstown, Anders finds himself dodging kinetic energy weapons and government assassins as Baltimore slips into chaos. His friends aren't as helpless as they seem, though, and his girlfriend's street magician brother-in-law might be a pretentious hipster or might hold the secret to saving them all. Frenetic and audacious, 3 Days in April is a speculative thriller that raises an important question. Once humanity goes down the rabbit hole, can it ever find its way back? That gives you kind of an idea of what's going on, but it doesn't give you an idea of kind of the elements that come into the storytelling. So it's more of like, I would call it more of exploring humanity in the face of innovation. Like, how far can humans go in this futuristic technological world before they're no longer human, before they start to lose their emotions and lose their capability to have those human traits and not just be a robot. So in this futuristic world, the cyber implants are kind of a norm, like genetically modifying things to enhance muscle tissue or genetically modify your appearance. That's kind of the norm here in this setting. Anders, our main character, when he was little, his parents decided to splice his genes with like mice genes, so he has that animal reflex. So he can kind of his reflexes are super fast. There's other modifications in the world that are described as the pretties, and then the Neanderthals, things like that. So that's kind of where we're at in this world. People can have ocular implants where they can kind of tap into the web just at will and just scroll through data feeds and communicate, things like that. And some of these modifications are made by their parents when they're little children, so some of them don't have a choice, but they can also add modifications later on. So there are the modified, or the altered, and then the unaltered, or just the plain humans, the purists, so to speak, where after this catastrophe happens in this town, we start to see blame being shifted between the two, the unaltered and the altered, the regular humans and kind of these modified humans. And so it kind of gets to a boiling point over, who did it, why they did it, what are their motivations, and we start to see tensions rise between the two, these modified, altered people and the unaltered. There's a lot of things to unpack in this book, and it's great. And the writing in this book also alternates points of view between four different characters, and it goes in order, which I didn't notice when I was reading the book. I didn't pick it up on, but it follows Anders, Terry, Elise, and Gary in that order. When Anders, Terry, Elise, Gary. Then after Gary, it goes back to Anders, Terry, Elise, Gary, and it follows that same formula throughout the entire book. And when you're reading it, I didn't pick it up on it immediately, and so when I was reading a new chapter, it just jumps into like, you know, the dialogue from the person in the previous chapter, and there were some instances where I had to kind of flip back and say, wait a minute, who's talking now? I mean, the characters aren't incredibly differentiated in their writing when you go from one to the other. You can kind of tell just by who they're talking to, but the writing styles don't vary so much that you can say, oh, I know that by this thought process that he's narrating, we're now in so-and-so's head. So that was kind of a bit of a jolt going through it, but you know, I commend the author for doing that process, which was very interesting, especially when the action sequences pick up. There's like, you know, these chapters fly by, there's like Anders, and then there's like one paragraph, and then there's Terry, and then there's another paragraph that's illustrating, you know, Anders went to this and did this, and then it goes through the different, it's like 4 different camera views in the same kind of scene, which was really interesting, and I really like that. And the character interaction between each other is really great. There's a lot of humor in this writing. There's sarcastic jabs between these 4 friends. They're all kind of like, you know, they all are also like, what the F is going on? But meanwhile, while they're researching all this stuff, they're kind of jabbing at each other, and it's kind of like, you can tell these are a good group of friends. The exchanges between them are a bit humorous and a bit sarcastic jabs here and there, which also I enjoyed, of course. And so the theme of this book is more of like, you know, when technology becomes so vast that we're alternating ourselves, where do we draw the line? AIs are now gaining sentience, while, you know, the materials and the modifications we put in our body, what kind of things can be uncovered with all of these technological innovations that we aren't thinking of now. We just kind of want the high-tech stuff so we can do cool things, but we don't think about the repercussions of that, how we interact, you know, with each other emotionally, how to have just personal conversations with each other. It kind of explores that, but it also explores like the government conspiracy of the all-seeing eye in the midst of all these innovations, and who can you trust. And when it comes to, you know, regular people who are not genetically modified versus the ones who are, who's the real, you know, whose side are you on? And it covers all of that in a cool, like, cyberpunk thriller, action-packed setting, with deep government conspiracies and some crazy religious overtones here and there. And then these 4 characters are caught in the midst of it, and they're kind of having a funny exchange with each other. And so it was all a really great debut novel. I had this on my TBR since like 2015, so there is hope for knocking out your TBR pile. And I've been wanting to read this for a long time. It was really enjoyable. I liked it, and I hope you do too. Tell me what you think in the comments, and I will see you next time. Thanks for watching. Bye.